So I saw Hereditary last night, a new film, a horror film by a young American director, Ari Aster. I really liked it, and I might do a full review later. But for now, I just wanted to do a quick video about some of the ideas and some of the historical kind of literary theory stuff that came up for me while watching it. Back at uni, I studied literature. For my honours thesis, I wrote about the impact of Darwinism on a literary movement called naturalism. Naturalist novels, mainly coming out of France and England in the middle of the 19th century, were characterised by their scientific perspective and explanations of their characters' behaviours in terms of their social and biological conditions. In naturalist crime novels, for example, the detective would, like an anthropologist or a scientist, look to the family ancestry of a villain to understand their criminality. For the first time, really, in history, homicidal tendencies were being seen as deeply embedded drives that in some might have been an inherited impulse, dooming them to criminal action. This naturalist's view is deterministic and reduces notions of free will, blame, and responsibility for one's actions. This literary movement was probably a response to Darwin's positing in On the Origin of Species in 1859 that a human is an animal, not special and not free from the restrictions and drives of our biology and genetics, but rather the result of the conditions and evolution of our ancestors over hundreds of thousands of years. Hereditary, a new horror film by a young American director, fits into this tradition of naturalism. It takes a scientific perspective, viewing its characters as physical things and as automata, doomed to think and behave in ways predetermined by their parentage. In Emile Zola's famous naturalist series, made up of 20 novels, Le Rougon Macquart, each character is presented as a cog within and their personality dependent on the larger structure of their surrounding family. When Zola introduced a character, he would often first explain their ancestry and the common behavioural traits running through the family line. We're introduced to the Graham family here in the same sort of way. Charlie and Peter are children of Annie and Steve. Annie's mother has recently died. Annie explains that her mother suffered from dissociative identity disorder and in later life dementia, so she too was doomed by the science of her physical nature of her brain. Annie's brother, she also tells us, suffered from psychosis and depression and committed suicide. She too appears to suffer from some mental illness. The sense here then is strong that these two of the newer generation, the two young children, might also be doomed by this family history, trapped in this old house defined by those who came before. When we meet Charlie, the youngest child, Annie's daughter, she's peering into the coffin of her grandmother. Camera angles highlight and mirror their structurally similar faces, Charlie and her grandmother. Immediately with this image, we are introduced to two central themes or ideas of this movie: heredity and death. And it is not beauty that is inherited here, but a slightly unusual nose and chin. Where Darwin and evolution were a major influence on the naturalist movement, so too were other scientific beliefs of the mid-19th century, such as phrenology, the notion, now debunked, that studying the anatomy and physiology of the head and face can reveal something about a person's psychological nature. Hereditary seems to consider this morally troubling notion too, as its cold camera holds long on the face of Charlie with the suggestion that she is somehow physically, genetically doomed to a strange life. The idea that these characters are trapped by their family history and their psychological lives are predetermined is represented by their dark, stuffy, closed-in existence within their wooden, fake-seeming house. The opening image is of a miniature house. The camera slides into the window where Peter comes to life. So from this opening, we have the idea that he is like a doll, crafted as someone else's plaything, and trapped within a small, false world. Importantly, it is his mother who is the builder of these models. So, like the image of Charlie is a product of her grandmother's genes, Peter is depicted as an actual product of his mother. People in Hereditary are things whose behaviour often plays out like things, like machines or like clockwork. Charlie makes a repetitive noise with her tongue, a bit like a clock ticking or like a cog turning within a larger mechanism, or perhaps like the physical thud of a head, a reminder of the brain and body as physical, biological stuff, not special, but made and destructible. She has inbuilt weaknesses which seem to propel her to her doom. Peter's English teacher talks of the fatal flaws of characters in ancient Greek tragedies. Charlie's fatal flaws seem to be physical. She has a severe peanut allergy too, again a biological inherited trait. She, like Peter, seems doomed to a fate predetermined by her parents, by her biology, and by her parents' parents and their parents. Another idea that comes up when we talk about naturalist or deterministic models of human behaviour is the question of free will. If one's behaviours are determined by their biology, and that is predetermined by what came before, to what extent are we in control of our actions? And if we say a person is not in control of their actions, to what extent should they be held accountable, blamed, or punished for those actions? Annie sleepwalks, sometimes with violent consequences, to which she must own up. In this way, sleepwalking is a good analogy for the way naturalists, and determinists more broadly, see human behaviour, responsibility, and free will. Peter and his mother, in an argument at the dinner table, seem to represent each side of this debate. Annie says she is to blame for her actions. If she has attacked someone, say, while sleepwalking, she must own that. Peter, on the other hand, has committed actions resulting in pain and death, but he detaches himself from them. They were outcomes resulting from a complex sequence of causes and effects for which he is not morally responsible. He floats around school acting, but seemingly not in control of his actions, like an automaton or like a clockwork toy. These are ideas I've been really interested in for a long time, so I was probably predisposed to love this movie. Given my history, it was perhaps inevitable that I'd give Hereditary 4 out of 5 stars.